Picture the room at 9 a.m. Stuffy air, buzzing lights, towers of dull paperwork, and a crowd of sleepy reporters tapping half-hearted tweets that read, "Day 12, nothing new." The judge flips pages, lawyers whisper, jurors stare at the ceiling tiles. It feels like every other slow legal morning, until a side door, the one nobody watches, eases open. Eddie Murphy steps through and the world stops. No warning, no publicist, just Eddie in a crisp navy suit, hands loose at his sides, eyes sharp enough to slice the hush in two. Heads whip around, pens drop. A boom mic operator actually gasps. Diddy, who has been lounging with that practiced cool, jolts upright as if someone yanked his chair. You can almost hear his heartbeat thudding through the walnut panels. For one charged second, nobody moves. Phones hover mid-air, live streams freeze. The bailiff forgets to say a word. Eddie's grin is tiny, more a signal than a smile, yet it lights the place like a flashbulb. He walks past the gallery, leather soles clicking slow, and sits straight in the witness chair. The judge clears his throat, but Eddie speaks first, low and clear. "I've been quiet for decades, but what I saw that night never shut up." The sentence cracks against the marble walls. A reporter near the aisle mouths, "Holy," and forgets the rest. Jurors lean forward as one unit. A producer in the back clutches a phone so tight the pop socket snaps. Even the court stenographer pauses just long enough to break her perfect rhythm. That single line changes everything. The stale routine of motions and exhibits is gone, burned away by a promise hiding behind Eddie's steady gaze. Secrets bigger than any late-night punchline are about to go public, under oath, on the record. The judge bangs the gavel twice, not to restore order, but to convince himself it ever existed. And every soul in that room, defense team, jury, press, viewers at home, understands the same simple fact. The real show starts now, and no one can look away. Rewind to a balmy July night when Eddie Murphy's comeback was hotter than fresh popcorn. Studio chiefs kept his agent on speed dial, offering front-loaded points, first-look deals, even private jets to script readings. Award bloggers whispered, "Best actor lock," and every red carpet host angled for a sound bite. In the middle of this golden frenzy, Eddie's personal line rang at 11:17 p.m. The caller was a powerhouse producer whose films opened to 9-figure weekends. Just his silky voice, no assistants, no agenda written down. "Small gathering in the hills," he said. "Strictly off calendar, but the kind of room where careers double overnight." Eddie hesitated for half a heartbeat. Curiosity won. His driver threaded those narrow, ivy-choked lanes where GPS fails and rumour thrives. At the crest sat a mansion that looked like old money got a facelift. Tuscan stone, modern glass, and security fit for a head of state. First clue, this wasn't a casual mixer, an iron gate that didn't swing without a fingertip scan. Second clue, valets in stealth black uniforms sweeping in to claim every phone, then sliding each device into velvet pouches stamped with a gold motto, "Be who you really are." Eddie felt a prickle at the base of his neck but followed the crowd inside. The entry hall was eerily hushed, as if someone had turned down reality's volume. No club beats, no actors swapping loud greetings, just faint sandalwood incense curling under 20-foot ceilings. Guests in couture drifted like chess pieces, speaking in tight circles or not at all. Eddie spotted a blockbuster director, 2 NBA All-Stars, and a fresh-faced starlet whose last rom-com still topped box office charts, yet none dared flash a selfie smile. Instead, every glance darted to shadowed corners, as though the house itself were watching. A lone attendant handed Eddie a handwritten card. "Tonight isn't about fame. Tonight is about truth." The handwriting looked almost gentle, but the message tasted like a dare. Eddie pocketed the card and moved deeper, past antique mirrors that seemed to multiply his doubts. Each step felt heavier, each murmur more coded. Somewhere beyond that hush lay the so-called experience, and though he didn't know the details yet, his instincts were already screaming that the cost of entry would not be measured in dollars, but in something far more personal and far harder to reclaim. A hush fell as attendants in spotless gloves pulled back twin velvet drapes, revealing a chamber that felt stitched together from fever dream fragments. walls the colour of dried blood, ceiling lost in candle smoke, and a banquet table so long it seemed to disappear into shadow. No flowers, no crystal, only a regiment of silver domes glinting like helmets under siege lights. At the head sat Diddy, throne style, tux immaculate, face carved into that slow, sharkish grin everyone in the industry recognises as both invitation and warning. A-listers obediently filled chairs, a current Oscar nominee, 2 chart-topping pop idols, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who tapped a ringed finger on polished wood, the gesture small yet jittery. A single bell chimed. Valets lifted the domes in one synchronised sweep. Underneath, raw monkey brains, pink and pulsing with melted ice, steam spiralling up like a dare. Nerves crackled louder than the chandeliers. Someone tried a shaky laugh. Another reached for champagne and missed. Diddy's voice glided across the room. "Greatness isn't cheap. Show me." He angled the spotlight squarely at Johnson. Fork poised, the action hero's signature eyebrow twitched. Not playful this time, but pleading. Before resolve triumphed over revulsion and metal met flesh. The crunch echoed. Diddy clapped once, crisp, sealing the bargain. Head swiveled toward Eddie, who felt the room tighten like a noose. In that frozen breath he grasped the real menu. Compliance or career excommunication, served cold beneath candlelight. Murphy's spine iced over as he weighed the stakes. Staying meant swallowing something far more corrosive than off-menu delicacies. Leaving meant challenging a kingmaker who could starve careers overnight. He opted for exit, feigning thirst to slip into a side hallway. That's when Diddy ghosted beside him, a hand draped across Murphy's shoulders in faux camaraderie, voice velvet yet lethal. "No rush, brother. We're family. You'll be back when you're ready to level up." The words settled like handcuffs. Outside, a hostess blocked the door with a champagne flute and a chilling mantra. Nobody leaves before the experience. He dodged, breezed past hedges, and let the night swallow him, heartbeat drumming louder than the bass that finally seeped outdoors. But freedom carried a price stamped in silence. Within weeks, once eager producers turned cryptic. The Chanel-scented phone calls evaporated, scripts, tailor-made for him, mysteriously recast. One studio email, later produced as evidence, labelled him not aligned in 2 damning words. Doors didn't slam, they dissolved. As months slid into years, box office Eddie morphed into Hollywood's most conspicuous absence. And every unanswered voicemail reminded him how quickly a king becomes a ghost the moment he refuses the feast. Hollywood's blacklist wears no scarlet letter, it wears a Cartier grin and an NDA. Murphy traced his exile to a network of moonlit dinners, private jets, and backroom murmurs where power brokers swapped intel like insider stock tips. No memos, no official edicts, just a slow leak of reputation until your name drew polite smiles and swift pivots. The unspoken decree: criticize the protected and you vanish by committee. Murphy learned the roster by accident. Oprah, Tyler Perry, a handful of studio titans, all reputed gatekeepers of a code that prized compliance over genius. One exec dismissed him with a shrug. He said no when he was supposed to say yes. That minimalist epitaph carried more sting than 1,000 tabloids. Emails surfaced, not aligned pass, as though ambition itself had a loyalty program he'd failed to join. For observers, the most sinister feature of this system was its plausibility. Careers fade all the time. Who's to say why? By the time whispers reached casting directors, the narrative solidified. Eddie was difficult, preachy, past it. In truth, he'd simply refused one midnight spoonful. But in a town where myth writes payroll, the difference between integrity and insubordination is measured not in ethics, but in who signs the checks. Fame's bright lights flickered off with merciless efficiency, leaving Murphy alone in cavernous rooms once lined with reading copies and red carpet tuxes. He spent days in the same worn armchair, replaying the mansion's candle-lit horror reel, and wondering if silence had rescued him, or merely prolonged the nightmare. Depression seeped under doors fame used to keep open. Even close friends couldn't penetrate the fog, because how do you confess you ran from monkey brains when no one believes the platter exists? The laughter of his children became a lifeline. Tiny, genuine giggles slicing through self-doubt like sunlight through blackout curtains. Faith stepped in next, not as a publicity crutch, but as nightly triage. Prayers whispered against the hush, questions swapped, why for when will truth matter, when will I speak? Therapy followed, sessions passing guilt over those he left behind, faces pale with fear while he sought a path out. Each morning he chose not to vanish entirely was an act of stubborn optimism. The industry's silence was loud, but it wasn't louder than his heartbeat, and somewhere within that rhythm lay the resolve to trade reputation for revelation when the moment finally demanded it. That moment arrived when Murphy locked eyes with the 12 jurors, strangers now tasked with arbitrating a decades-deep rot. He peeled back confidentiality like duct tape, an unwritten don't criticize list shielding moguls from scrutiny, crafted by influence and maintained by fear. Oprah, Perry, Diddy, they weren't merely powerhouses, they were pillars of a structure that fed on hush money and career leverage. Reporters' keyboards rattled as he spelled it out. This list is more border than document. Once you cross it, you don't come back. Defense counsel scrambled, demanding a sidebar, but the genie had sprinted. The judge's caution against speculation rang hollow. Murphy countered, "I'm not speculating, Your Honour. I lived it." Each name cracked the courtroom's composure like ice under hot water, and the tension spiked to fever pitch. Yet what stunned observers most was Murphy's calm, not the fury of a wronged star, but the clarity of a man who'd already served exile and had nothing left to lose. That composure lent his words gravity impossible to spin away. The gossip grapevine suddenly sounded like sworn deposition, and Hollywood's gilded ceiling sagged under the newfound weight of accountability. When prosecutors pressed why now, Murphy sketched a simple equation. Cassie Ventura's trembling testimony, plus Monique's receipts, plus a resurrected Prince warning equals the walls finally cracking. He wasn't chasing a book deal, he was chasing peace. His children had asked why Dad quit performing, and he could no longer hide behind fatigue. "I stopped because I wasn't willing to lose myself to gain a career," he told the jury, voice steady yet raw. The motive then wasn't vengeance, it was prevention. Ensuring no aspiring artist mistook Diddy's trap for a staircase ever again. He framed the mansion rights as an industrial hazing ritual masquerading as opportunity, a system that rewarded obedience by stripping humanity. This testimony turned the trial from single-defendant spectacle into referendum on Hollywood's entire profit model, audience retention spikes on moral stakes, and here they soared, a beloved funny man bearing spiritual scars to spare unknown dreamers their own. The lesson? Silence benefits the machine, but confession, especially from someone who already lost the limelight, has the potential to jam its gears. In Murphy's calculus, losing roles was preferable to losing soul, and that trade-off resonated like a tuning fork through every credibility-chasing intern glued to the live stream. Then came the line destined for infinite loop on TikTok reels and think piece headlines. "Don't protect the pretty lie, let the truth be ugly." Murphy paused before delivering it, letting anticipation vacuum the oxygen, then dropped the sentence with surgical precision. Phones shot up, hashtags congealed in real time. Within minutes, the quote spiked trending charts, meme creators overlaying it atop black and white stills of the comedian's steely profile. The beauty of the moment lay in its duality, equal parts confessional mic drop and rallying cry against institutional gloss. By the time the gavel signalled recess, social media sentiment had turned the courtroom into ground zero of a cultural reckoning, one tweet reading, "Murphy just yanked the velvet rope off Hollywood's dirtiest secret." Audience retention, sky high, the feed refresh rate rivaled a championship final. Even those who'd never watched a trial clip before suddenly devoured every update, searching for context to that single, searing admonition. The defense team's collective expression, a fusion of bewilderment and dread, served as the viral clip's B-roll, underscoring how one sentence can melt millions in legal fees. And somewhere behind counsel's table, Diddy stared ahead, realizing influence had finally met an immune system of amplified honesty. Court resumed to an atmosphere electric and heavier, as though the very air had gained mass. When proceedings adjourned, Murphy rose. Jurors followed suit, not out of protocol, but respect. He strode toward daylight, reporters detonating questions that fizzled unanswered in his wake. Behind him, Diddy sat statue still, a man assessing whether the empire he'd engineered could withstand a single witness who'd traded silence for salvation. Outside, social media correspondents broadcast warnings of tsunami testimony still to come, rumours of additional insiders ready to corroborate, names rumoured but unconfirmed. The final beat lands as Murphy pauses on the courthouse steps, absorbs the camera flash storm, and offers no encore, just a resolute nod that says, "See you tomorrow," because tomorrow threatens fresh revelations, perhaps new names, maybe even a leaked email thread that maps the entire Whisper network in black and white. For the audience, that unspoken promise is irresistible. Same channel, next episode, bigger bombshells. For Hollywood's elite, it's a sleepless night prophecy. Either way, the spotlight Murphy once feared he'd lost now blazes hotter than ever. Only this time it's aimed not at punchlines, but at the fault lines beneath an industry finally learning how much truth its foundations can bear.